This is the Construction Leading Edge podcast from constructionleadingedge.com and constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. My name is Todd DeWalt. It's my job to help you, the construction business owner, eliminate chaos and maximize revenue. Got a great interview for you today with Spencer Sheinin. He's owned businesses in manufacturing, construction, real estate. He is also a CPA, and he is the founder and CEO of Shift Financial Insights, where he provides ridiculously simple accounting and financial insights. We're going to talk a lot about financial insights. Here's what you're going to hear about. What you're going to learn about is, first of all, the danger of not handling your books. You're going to learn about how to overcome the language barrier when you're talking to a financial professional. And what does it mean to have good financial data? What are financial insights? We talk about some interesting ways to look at your data that will make it come alive and tell a better story for you. You'll also hear some interesting thoughts on how to think about a big topic that a lot of you tell me you're dealing with, which is cash flow, how to think about cash flow. And then you'll hear Spencer explain what the full accounting stack means. Before we get into that interview, a couple of things I want to share with you. If you want to systematize your construction business, like so many folks have told me, Todd, I need systems and processes. I need processes and systems. I need systems. I have too much chaos in my business. So if that's you, if you want to systematize your construction business, then you want to get in on this free online training workshop that I'm doing, releasing videos as we speak. And you can get your hot little hands on them by going to constructionbusinessaccelerator.com, filling out the form, and I'll send you the videos. But you got to hurry. They're only available for the next week or so. Today is August 5th, 2019. They will only be available through around August 14th, August 15th. So if you want to get the secrets, some really practical strategies from a guy who's built a lot of systems inside construction businesses, go to constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. Get your free videos. You can watch them whenever you want. It's not live. You can watch them on your schedule, on demand. Systematize your construction business. And the second thing I want to tell you about that's coming up also, the Advance, the live event for construction business owners. The next one is coming up. And if you want to get access, early bird access, and save quite a bit of money in the process, then you're going to want to grab one of these early bird spots for the Advance by August 15th. When is the event? It's October 17th and 18th. It's in Lexington, Kentucky. It's going to be an opportunity for you to come be in a room, in an environment filled with other construction business owners just like you. You're going to learn how they're doing it. You're going to get some great training. You're going to be able to bounce ideas off people. And maybe more importantly, you're going to walk out of there with relationships with other construction business owners just like you who are dealing with the same struggles and challenges you are, that you can call, text, email after this thing is over, and you won't feel like an island anymore. So to get your ticket for the Construction Business Accelerator Advance, then go to constructionbusinessaccelerator.com/advance. Get your hands on that. And if you're driving, if you're on the lawnmower and you're like, I can't remember all those links, then just remember this number, 859-667-2015. You can send me a text to 859-667-2015. Tell me what you need. If you want systems training, put the word systems in there. If you want the link to the Advance, put the word Advance in there. I will send you the link so you can get back to it. But grab your early bird seat for the Advance. It's going to be good. Could be life-changing for you. The last couple of advances that have taken place have been transformational for the people that come, and I don't want you to miss out on it. All right, so without further ado, let's get to the interview with Spencer Sheinin. Enjoy. Okay, Spencer Sheinin, welcome to the podcast. I know it's early where you're at, but how are you today?
I'm excellent. Thank you very much. Thanks so much for having me on today.
Right on. I appreciate the opportunity. So you're in what part of Canada are you in?
I'm in Vancouver, so if you're not familiar with Canada very well, think Seattle. We're about a 3-hour drive from Seattle.
Got it. Well, fortunately, I speak fluent Canadian, so
Okay,
I
excellent.
will when I won't refer to them as projects. I'll call them projects
Projects,
and
yes.
processes, and I think we'll be fine. So
Well,
um,
that'll take care of it. You've pretty much got it dialed at this point.
that's it. I'm an 80-20 guy, so if I can say those things right, then it eliminates that language barrier, which we're going to talk about a different language barrier in a few minutes. So let's start with this. You're in the financial and accounting world, and you help people un-F their books, which
Yes.
we'll get into that a little bit later. But let's start with this. What is the danger of not having good financial information, not having your books right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think about that. I really think that in kind of two areas. One is the unknown. Uh, there's nothing worse than waking up, getting into the office, whatever, and finding out that, you have some bills due today that you weren't expecting, or there's not enough money for payroll Thursday. So it's when things happen that are unexpected. That to me is the biggest danger. Was showing up. Wow, I got to come up with 70K this week. I wasn't expecting that. Which really leads into the second piece, which is killing your mindset. When you're getting all these surprises, and it's the unknown. It's going to bed not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow, or always expecting bad news because you've just had this constant experience of bad news, bad news. And I personally think when you don't have financial clarity, there's kind of this big black cloud that follows you around no matter what, no matter what's going on. That's good. There's always that, okay, what's coming around the corner, I don't know. And so I find just when people are unclear, I call that crisis mode in the numbers, and just that fear, that constant fear of what's going on.
Yeah. So constant reactive mode, waiting to get punched in the
Yeah.
face,
or
waiting for the knock at the door.
or kicked in
Probably,
the
I can tell you from personal experience, every phone call is bad.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
every time somebody walks in your office, you don't want to look at the mail. You don't want to answer the phone. Sometimes you don't want to get out of bed. So it's
Yeah.
it's it's definitely a downward spiral. And I agree. I think that the dark cloud visual is good because
Yeah.
you just don't know. It's you have no visibility. You don't know where the plane's flying. You're just
Yeah.
waiting to run into the side of the mountain. Yeah, definitely,
Yeah, and I'm
definitely.
not
So
even talking about audits or anything like that. I mean, that's a different thing when,
right.
IRS comes knocking and they put on their rubber gloves and start diving into your information. Right?
Yeah, that I've been through an IRS audit,
Oh, okay.
and yeah, that felt a bit like a colonoscopy.
Yeah,
Not fun,
the
and it
rubber
would
glove
certainly
treatment.
it goes a lot better if you have good data. Yeah, and when it comes to growing your business, let's say I've talked to folks who have wanted to get more bonding capacity, or
Mhm.
they wanted to increase their line of credit, or go work with a new bank, and then they don't have information
Yeah,
to share with them,
yeah,
and they have to spend 4 or 6 weeks or more getting together information, missing out on huge opportunities. So,
yeah. The
yeah,
fastest
definitely.
way, the fastest way to be able to raise money is to deliver a really, really clean financing package, which has information. And I would actually argue more importantly than that is no matter how good your package is, if you want to get a line of credit or a loan, if they ask a couple questions, if you can turn that around in 24 hours, um, most bankers be like, "What? Wow, I wasn't expecting that," because so many businesses struggle to have the numbers. So if you can have that in a really clean presentation right up front, that's almost enough to push the bank over the top to give you money because they know you're on top of it.
Yeah, these guys know their stuff. They know their numbers. They have good data. That's a good leading indicator of a company that
Yeah.
has their stuff together on other areas.
I mean, I
Yeah,
kind of
that's good.
talk about it like the bathroom in a restaurant. And it may seem funny, but like as an owner of a restaurant, you're going to have a bathroom, but it's actually not really for you. It's for the customers. It's for the staff. I mean, you'll use it occasionally, but it's really for other people. And we've all been to restaurants where the bathroom is disgusting, and the first thing you think of is what's going on in the kitchen. Right.
Right.
Kind of your numbers are the same thing. If your numbers are a mess and you hand them to a banker, they're thinking, well, what's going on in the rest of your business? Because if you can't even get the basics of accounting right, are you getting the basics of your business development right, or the basis of your operations right? So yeah, that's why I think of it like the bathroom in a restaurant.
Very true. And yeah, if you go into the bathroom of a restaurant and there's no soap in the soap dispenser,
Yeah.
you should probably turn around and leave, right?
Yeah.
And
I've
so,
actually never thought of it from the soap perspective. I always just had the image of the nasty bathroom, but yeah, soap's even worse because that is for the
yeah,
staff.
yeah, yeah. And I speak from firsthand experience there. So let's talk about the language barrier. There's this language barrier, especially between construction business owners and folks like yourself, that there's this gap that they need to jump to be able to understand what's going on. Typically, contractors understand. We don't come from a finance and accounting background. We just think differently, come up through the trades. Maybe it's construction management, engineering, design. There may even be a few architects who somehow come over from the dark side to be contractors. But there's a big language barrier. So let's talk about that language barrier and getting some clarity when it comes to talking with somebody like yourself about the numbers.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge barrier. I think of it, like I went to school for 3 years to learn how to, create and interpret financial statements. And for some reason, as accountants, we seem to think it's okay to create financials, hand it to an owner, a contractor, and go like, here you go, and run the other direction. It's kind of like the reverse. I'm actually quite proud of myself. A few weeks ago, I actually wired in my first outlet, and I didn't kill myself or anybody around me. So the language is just as complicated the other way, right? Like I don't, sure, I can probably hammer a board together, but I couldn't frame a house. I don't have the skills that trades do, and vice versa. And there's just as much specialization one way or the other. So for me, I actually, instead of expecting the owner to come to the accountant, instead of handing information, I think the expectation should be turned around. And I think the accountant needs to actually start speaking in a language that contractors understand. And to me, a lot of that is actually in pictures. It's reading a set of blueprints for your business. So rather than taking a set of financials and having to interpret them, if you take the 4, 5, 6 things that are most important and turn it into a picture, if it's your net income, just a line showing how your net income is tracking versus how you were tracking last year versus, and of course, I know all your listeners have a budget, so tracking against the budget. I know not all the listeners have a budget. But if you look at a chart that just has just those 3 lines on it, you don't have to understand financials. You can look, I'm doing better than last year and I'm doing worse than my budget. It's not complicated. Same with your sales, maybe same with your margin, your gross margin, which is going to be the make or break for any contractor. And you can literally look at a half a dozen or 8 charts and without having any accounting knowledge whatsoever, know exactly where you sit. So to me, that's the way to really get over the language barrier and to stop expecting contractors to understand accounting. It just isn't a good use of time. So yeah, if we can get on the same page, we can understand things the same way. I think that's going to make a huge difference. I think a lot of contractors, not just contractors, but entrepreneurs kind of everywhere, tend to avoid accounting. They tend to I know a lot that get their financial statements and put them in a drawer, right? It's not the first thing people want to look at because they're complicated. They're difficult to understand. It would be like me taking a detailed set of plans and trying to do something with it. Like I can barely understand the cross section of a set of blueprints, right? Like it's not what I'm trained to do. So that's really the basis of the language barrier.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. A few years ago, I was running a company and I had my accountant, my bookkeeper, in the office create a dashboard report, and it had some trailing information. So I just gave her a few things that I was really concerned about and had her plug it into a spreadsheet that created some charts that showed where are we with accounts payable, accounts receivable, how's our backlog, what's our labor, what was our payroll the last 4 to 6 weeks. Let's, as you said, let's not just look at a snapshot because that's not all that helpful. But if we can look at how we're trending, if our accounts receivable are going up and our accounts payable are going down and our overhead costs are going up, then danger, these lines are crossing and we need to do something. So it's like the dashboard analogy works well for me because it tells me where are we headed? Do we need to jump in and make some adjustments? So I think that's a great idea to do that. And
And
that's probably not that difficult to do with the data that you have, right?
no, and I mean, I think the dashboard that you're talking about is actually kind of the second level. Like if you're sitting there struggling, like I don't even know where to start. If you can literally just take literally a few key items, um, I would start with cash. What's my cash position?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I would go to, what's my net income? What's
Mhm.
my sales? What are my expenses? What are my receivables? What are my payables? Literally just that group, and put them on a chart so you can track them as long as 2 years. I'd sort of have 1 year followed by the second year on the same chart in a different color. And those things you were talking about, when something starts to stick out, it's really easy to miss it when it's in numerical financial statement form. It's just hides in there, where those charts tell a story. It's like, whoa, why my expenses like are higher than they've ever. You need zero financial training for that, and it'll
Mhm.
stick out like a sore thumb. So that's why I like doing that way. And then you talked about adding that dashboard. You mentioned your payables, your receivables. There's a few things on there that you want to see. And maybe even, yeah, your backlog that won't come out of your financials, right? I think you
Right.
mentioned your sales backlog. So how much business do I have coming? Am I going to run out of business in 1 month or 3 months? How hard do I have to be selling right now? So all of those things, that to me is like level two. Like once you can just get the basics of understanding where you're at, starting to understand where you're going. And if you can do that in pictures too, even better. So I love the dashboard you were just talking about for sure.
Excellent. So most people know what an accountant, what a bookkeeper does.
Mm-hmm.
They enter data, they create reports, maybe they
Yep.
create visuals, they provide information. But what does it mean to the construction business owner? How is their life different um, when they have good clarity, good optics into their financials?
Yeah, and I think it's really important to distinguish what a bookkeeper does versus what you need. Those are two different things.
Mm,
So
okay.
what a bookkeeper does is exactly what you say. They handle all the day-to-day transactions, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, if you think about a job site and you've got a contractor, you've got some trades, and you've got laborers, say, on the job site. We all know that. You don't have to be in construction to know that. You almost have to think about it exactly the same way in accounting, whereas the bookkeeper is essentially the laborer of a job site. They're a critical part of the job site. It's really important, but they have a certain skill set. And you'd never hire a laborer to build you a whole house. They might know a little bit of framing, they might know a little bit of electrical, but you still need all the stack, we'll call it, of people to get the job done. In accounting, it's really the same thing. And the bookkeeper is kind of like I said, the laborer of the job site. To me, getting that's just the basic information in place, and that will get you to good data. I think the part that's missing that a lot of people don't see and recognize, that there's other functions. There's a reporting and compliance function. There's a strategic function in accounting, not just the transactional function. So people actually go to the bookkeeper expecting them to interpret and explain to them what's going on and help them
Mm,
fix their business problems. But that's not what a bookkeeper is trained to do. A bookkeeper is trained to enter the data into the system, and those are the reports. The
mm,
controller, that's the reporting function. That's the person who's going to take it, tweak it, make sure you've got, and forgive me for saying policies and procedures in accounting, but getting the policies and procedures right. When you get an invoice, how do you know where it goes in the statements? What is the boring things, the chart of accounts look like, those types of things. And then it's the higher level, again, the CFO, that's going to take it and help you make decisions around pricing. They're going to help you, where is the business in 5 years from now? What if, instead of only doing, what if we want to switch from new construction to renos? What if we want to get into TIs? What if we want to look at fixed pricing versus cost plus? That's what a strategic person is going to help you figure out. What does our cash flow going forward look like in 3 months, 6 months, and like I said, 5 years? So I think it's really important to distinguish between what the bookkeeper does. And I think a lot of people expect more out of a bookkeeper than what a bookkeeper can do. Think of them as the laborer of a job site. sure, a great laborer is really valuable on a job site, but there's a limit as to what they can do. So there's the creation. So, we already talked about kind of the threats if you don't have your data. If you don't have your data in good form, we've already talked about those threats. But to me, the real value in good data is to help interpret it. And that's a different skill set again. And so when you can look at your numbers and and this may not be you, this may be finding the right person, can really pull the stories out of the financials. To me, what financials are is it's a story about where you are in your business. That's the value in the financials, to help guide you in terms of what decisions to make. Do I need to spend my energy selling more, or do I need to spend my energy fixing the business so that when I sell more, I'm actually going to make money? Because if my business model is broken, it doesn't matter how much I sell. I'm just, giving myself stress for no more money. So that to me is what the data is for. The data is there to inform the stories, which is a different skill set than creating the numbers. I think that's a huge, so many people I talk to miss that really important, subtle difference.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You're right. Most people think, well, I have a bookkeeper.
Yeah.
Okay. So, or I'm doing my own bookkeeping.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what that means is you're entering data. You have a data entry person.
Yeah.
But do you have someone who's giving you financial insights?
Yeah.
Is there anyone who's telling you, okay, this is what this means.
Mm-hmm.
This is how you use this data, how this affects your strategy.
Yeah.
What do you do with it? That's what a controller, that's what a CFO needs. And at a certain point, well, I think at all points in a business, somebody needs to be interpreting that data and informing the strategy of the business based on what's going on. But typically it's, well, we got our financial statements in and we're looking in the rearview mirror. We got January's statement in early April.
Yeah. Right.
What good does that do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, how is that helping you? Like,
yeah.
This is what we should have done, or we could have done 3 months ago, right?
And I think another challenge a lot of contractors would have is they also expect that if you get a year end done with an external accountant, a lot of people might call that's my CPA. And of course, CPA can be internal or external, but if you get a year end and taxes done, I think there's often an expectation that they're going to give you these big aha moments. And just like you've got laborers, trades, and contractors, you almost need to think of your year-end accounting firm. That's almost like your architect, right? They're an external person. They've got a role to fill, and their expertise is reviewing your financials for compliance to the rules and doing taxes in compliance with the rules. There are some really amazing external accountants, but a lot of them have never worked in an operating business. Their role, they haven't been hired to actually analyze your business. They've been hired to do a review of your business based on the accounting rules. So I hear that complaint a lot, where it's like, well, I'm not getting anything from my CPA or my external accountant. Well, yeah, that's not really what you hired them for. So yeah, same thing. They just have a different skill set.
Yeah, so it comes down to expectations. If you're expecting your bookkeeper to give you insights, or if you're expecting your CPA to give you business advice, you'll be disappointed. And I've been through this. Several years ago. I was running a company and we grew the business pretty significantly, had a great year, and then found out from our CPA that we needed to write a check for about $400,000 for taxes.
Yeah.
And I said, this would have been really good to know back in November when we could have done something with it. So it's all rearview mirror. But I was expecting, I would expect that Ricky's looking at our quarterly statements and he's seeing what's happening, but no, his job is just to do what you said. So somebody else had to say, oh, this is what this means. We need to do something so we don't write a huge check. Let's do something else with that and invest it back into the company.
Yeah, and I mean that's probably the one area that if you were to go to your external and say, look, this is what I'm expecting next year. What does that mean for tax, and what can I do about it? Generally it's those external people that are going to help you with tax planning. But I do find you've kind of got to go to them with that question. Yeah. It's just, you'd think they'd intuitively do it, but asking them about your future tax situation as early as possible would be helpful. Of course, you've got to have good data again in order to tell them what you're expecting. If they're not, they're not going to be able to read minds and guess what you're going to do. So if you say, hey, I'm going to have a year like last year, I'm going to have a year better than last year. I'm going to have a year 50% better than last year. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you're arming them to say, look, I'm going to make X dollars next year, how can we plan around that? Then they should be in a great position to help you.
Yeah. Excellent. Let's talk about cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
How should people think about cash flow differently?
Yeah, I mean, of course, obviously, assuming you're getting good data to start with and you understand where you're at. So that's kind of the base place. I always think about cash flow is it's complex, but if you just break it down into a few categories, there's like literally 6 or 7 questions to ask. You can only impact cash flow certain ways. Some of them are obvious, some a little less obvious, but starting with revenue. How do you get your revenue up? There's really only a couple ways to do it. You can increase price, and obviously, if you're winning every piece of business you're going after, you can probably increase your price. You can increase your throughput, and you can increase your throughput by doing more of what you already do or offering more services or products. So increasing revenue is one way to drive cash flow. Decreasing your cost of goods, so your materials, your labor, or if you can get a bigger spread on it, make people more efficient. Decreasing cost of goods, you can reduce your overheads, your cost of running the business. Those are really, if you think about your whole income statement, those 3 areas: revenue, cost of goods, and expenses. Which one of those is going to be easiest for you to drive up or down? Increasing your revenue, increasing your growth, or decreasing your costs, or decreasing your overheads. That's kind of a pretty simple way to look at the income statement in 4 buckets. And then the other, which we kind of alluded to before, can I collect faster or can I pay slower? Often people don't take those extra few days to pay. And if you have inventory, I mean, I don't imagine too many listeners in this instance have inventory, but maybe some people maintain materials or they buy in bulk and then use that on various jobs. Decreasing inventory increases your cash flow. So literally, if you start to get a handle and you get those visual charts and you look at those categories over time, and you can see, am I tracking the wrong direction in any of those? Just impacting one of those 6 or 7 areas is going to start to drive an increase in cash flow. There's not a lot of other things you can do to address cash flow. So, again, I'm going to say it one more time just because I went through it quickly, but it's increase your price, increase your throughput, decrease your cost of goods, decrease your overheads, collect faster, pay slower, and if you have inventory, use it faster. Those are literally the key drivers of cash flow. You can't, other than getting debt, getting some debt or whatnot, but in the operations of it, that's all you can do. That's it. So don't get too hung up on trying to make it more complicated than that.
Right. What are some bad ways to address? What are some mistakes people make when it comes to addressing cash flow? What are some things they should not do?
Yeah, what a great question. Again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but without good data, if you're trying to improve cash flow without good data, I think that can run into a problem. I think I might have already given the example before, like if you're trying to drive revenue, but you don't have enough margin, gross margin, your sales minus your labor and materials, if you've got a 2% margin, no matter how much you grow, you're never going to make money. So, going after the things that aren't the key drivers of your cash flow problem, that's the mistake to me. Yeah. So, that's why, if you've got those 6 or 7 charts, which one can you influence the most to have the biggest impact? And honestly, pricing is often the biggest one. Sure, you can look at your office expenses and try and save, $100 on pens because you guys bought too many pens last year. But again, if your margin isn't good enough, or you're not, maybe you need to charge out your labor at, instead of $10 an hour, $12 an hour. I know it's more than $12 an hour, but different people in jurisdictions. So, can you increase what you're charging out your labor at? And, that's the fastest, easiest way to increase your cash flow is to increase price. And generally the second way is to decrease your cost of goods if you can. Can you negotiate for better, instead of buying materials on a job by job basis, can you make an agreement with a supplier for, I'm going to buy this much in the year. Can I get a 3% discount for the year or a 5% discount for the year by committing that I'm going to buy everything from you? Those types of things that are going to have the biggest impact. Don't worry about the $100 problems. Worry about the $1,000 and $10,000 problems.
Yeah. What about taking on debt? What do you think about if somebody is in cash flow crunch mode? What do you think about taking on debt to get out of it?
Yeah, I think that, well, if that's your only choice, do it. I think of debt, it depends on why you're getting the debt. If you're getting the debt to make up for operational problems in your business, that feels like a big cyclone that's about to hit you. So if I'm just not running efficiently and my cash flow sucks in general, then no, I don't like it. If it's because you are trying to grow or because you're investing in the business, maybe you're going to take on a client that's going to be, your premier client, but it's going to cost you up front, or they've negotiated some payment terms that are problematic for you, but they're trustworthy and you're going to get paid, but you've got a 6-month gap in cash flow. I have no problem addressing structural needs with debt. I have a problem dealing with operational failures with debt. Because if you get money, you're going to be relieved from that pain today, but you're going to have even more pain tomorrow, because not only are you going to be out of money again, you're also going to be owing somebody. And unless you're an absolute monstrous size business, the irony is the smaller the loan, the more likely you are going to have to personally guarantee it and put your own house on the line. Whereas if you're borrowing $100 million, nobody ever gets a personal guarantee for that. It's kind of funny.
I agree. My advice to people is, well, when people have asked me that, my coaching clients have asked, what do you think about this? We're having a cash flow problem. And I tell them, listen, your cash flow issues are a symptom of a lot of underlying problems. Yeah. And the only reason debt makes sense is if the root cause is a lack of cash.
Yes.
But chances are it's a root cause of a lot of other symptoms like low productivity, selling at the wrong price. You don't know what your overhead is, all of these other things.
Totally agree.
And if you have some investment, there's a clear-cut payoff for this debt that you're thinking about taking on, then yeah, it makes sense. Buying a piece of equipment, investing in a new hire so you can get this project and you've got a clear-cut payoff. But otherwise, what you're doing is handing somebody who's dug themselves a hole a bigger shovel.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, here, you can dig deeper and faster with debt, because not only is it not solving your problems, now you have interest payments to put on top of it. And it relieves the need for discipline, because giving somebody cash just takes away the need to be disciplined. It's like, oh, well, we can just float. We can just continue to operate, maybe make dumber decisions for the next few months. And then, oh, look, we're out of money. And I speak from experience. I've been there. I've done that.
And we all have, any owner who's ever been in business for any length of time has found themselves in exactly that situation.
Yeah. We'll come out of it. Our luck's bound to change. Yeah. So if you're listening and you need help with cash flow, I've got some resources put together called the Cash Flow Solution in my Construction Business Accelerator program, which you can get. They'll have a link at the end, but you can get this stuff for free and go figure out what the real root causes of your cash flow problems are. Productivity, planning, selling, all sorts of things that will give you some levers that you can pull to solve your problems. All right, good stuff about that. Let's talk about getting clarity. What are some questions that business owners should ask to get clarity on their financials when they're thinking about hiring a CFO or a controller, or they're thinking about bringing somebody in? What are some questions that they should start with when it comes to that?
Yeah, if you're looking to hire someone, the question that I would ask first off is, is for an example of what a reporting package looks like. Show me in what form are you going to deliver me this information. And if they hand you a set of financials and say, here's what it is, that to me is a big red flag. That comes back to that language barrier we talked about before. They're not thinking the way you're thinking. And there's a lot of accountants, frankly, that don't, if I can say. Whereas if they're bringing you a package that has graphics, that has charts and graphs that you look at and you just instantly am like, okay, yeah, I know what this means. Or after one time through, you're totally confident. That to me is what you're looking for when you're hiring your next person. The technical side of accounting isn't that complicated. Most accountants, particularly if they're a CPA, but most accountants are going to get most things right. There's usually just a few last things you got to get right. So, you're probably not going to be able to interview them for their technical skills anyway. So don't worry about it. You can maybe get a CPA friend of yours or even your external accountant to do the interview on the technical side. For me, it's about, does this person get that they have to give me information in a way I understand? And what other information are they going to get me about the future? So if I have good data in the past, that's usually the basis to build good data in the future. How are they going to arm me to know what's happening in 3 months, 6 months, and 5 years? Those are the two areas I would really focus on if I'm looking for somebody new.
Good advice. Mm-hmm. Let's shift gears. I'm a big mindset guy.
Right.
I believe that that's where, well, what I tell people is you are your own worst enemy, typically. Mm-hmm. And that's the bad news, but that's also good news. So let's talk about the entrepreneurial mindset. I had somebody ask me at an event that I had recently, do you think that there's a connection between mindset and success? The question was, do all these people who think this way have some level of success? So let's talk about mindset. Mm-hmm. Where do you think mindset comes into play? What if somebody asks you about mindset, where would you send them? Where would you start?
Yeah.
I know that's a wide open question, sure, but let's just go with that.
It's one of my favorite topics because I think it's crucial. I mean, I think it's everything as an entrepreneur. I've been a very active member of the Entrepreneurs Organization for 15 years, and you see it within members in that community. Everybody in that community owns businesses, and just while I am a CPA, I have an accounting practice. I've owned businesses in. I had a manufacturing business for 15 years. I actually owned a construction business. We built high-end custom homes in Vancouver. I've owned a cold storage. We had 4 facilities in Washington State. So I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, not just an accountant. So mindset is near and dear to my heart, particularly when things are challenging, and every entrepreneur has challenging times. So for me, I mean, my answer to mindset really starts in the morning. I'm a huge believer in a morning routine. Mine takes between an hour and a half, which involves everything from, doing morning gratitudes. If you're into mindset, I have no doubt you talk about gratitude a lot. Just being appreciative of the things that are available to us and that we have. I was actually in China until 2 days ago, and I got back 2 nights ago, and my first gratitude in the morning was, wow, I'm glad I slept well. You do a trip like that, you don't sleep so well. I also go, I do reading. So I read something every morning. It can be a couple minutes. Sometimes I get sucked in and I'm reading it for an hour. I do that. I make sure nutrition, I prepare myself an appropriate breakfast. I know for me, food and hydration are one of the 2 things that impact my mindset a lot. I journal a little bit. So I often at night, my evening routine is what is the one thing, what is the number one question I have to answer in my life? Let my brain think about it overnight, and then I'll journal about that for 5 minutes in the morning. Physical, I'm a huge believer that, how your body is, your mind is. I've had back issues for years. So I do my, morning, really boring core exercise. You lift one leg up 3 inches. It's really boring. I don't like doing it. But all of those things get me in the mindset for the day. And, when I don't do that exercise, when I don't do the gratitudes, I actually find myself a little bit more irritable. Whereas, it's during the day, something doesn't go the way I'm planning, right? A client that I thought was going to say yes decides not to say yes. You know, there's a surprise. We have, you know, a client that has an issue that you got to jump in on. All those things you don't want to deal with. I find when I'm in the right mindset, all of that stuff is just, it's about a quarter of the energy than when I'm, you know, if I'm hungry or thirsty, or I haven't, you know, I didn't do my gratitudes, or I did, you know, I also meditate. When I don't do those things, and I get, you know, that sideways kick in the butt, those are just so much harder when I'm not in the right place. And it takes me a lot longer to recover from. And I don't know about you, but I just want to enjoy life a little bit. I don't want every time I have a bad news at work to ruin my day. Like it's so incredible right now. We live in incredible times. Why would I want that to ruin? And if I'm not disciplined, that's when the bad news ruins my day. And what's the point of being an entrepreneur if you're not enjoying the journey?
Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I've found that on a day where I've been in my routine and I'm in a positive mental state, something can happen, and no big deal. Where Todd becomes action oriented, Todd's problem solver. Todd doesn't let this stuff stick to him. Todd works through it. Todd doesn't get frustrated. But if I go a few days and not follow my routine, and I'm not trying to create the right mental state, that exact same thing can happen a few weeks later. And it's a big deal. It takes me off my game. I get frustrated. I start telling myself stories, and I'm sort of in this downward spiral. And if you're not careful, you can end up at the bottom pretty fast. And that's tough to get out of. So other than gratitude, what's your advice for priming yourself to protect your mental state so that you are shielding yourself from the inevitable, I won't call them bad things, because I don't really believe there are bad things. I think there are things that happen and we tell ourselves bad stories. But what are some things you can do to protect, what are things you do to protect your mental state other than gratitude?
Yeah, for me, I know that, and this might sound funny, but if I'm hungry, I can get in this state where it's not possible. Like, I can't deal with this. I can't solve it. This is totally broken. Literally, I'll like eat an apple and be like, oh, well, why don't we just do this? So for me, I've noticed it's literally when I get in that mode of like everything's horrible, I'm like, okay, am I hungry? I'm probably hungry. I do a lot of endurance sports, so if I don't eat, bad things happen. And so, you know, if to flip that from my experience to kind of the journey that I had to do is just the awareness of when was I in the worst spot. And then I just always noticed it happened to be when I was hungry. So that's kind of my magic pill, is just to eat something, and, you know, ideally healthy. I fall off that wagon occasionally, but yeah, I think it's the personal awareness of when am I in the worst mental state, and what's the environment that's happening to put me in that state. Because just like you said, if you're doing your routine and you're in a good mental position, whereas 2 weeks later you're not, and that's because you haven't been doing the routine, whatever is that trigger. I think we all have different triggers, so I don't want to say eating is the answer for everybody. Yeah, so I just think it's the awareness of when am I in that bad state. And environmentally, I think our environment has such an important impact on mental state. So what is it in the environment that's not working for me right now? And trends will start to show up. For some people, you know, and I talked about food, staying hydrated. If I get fatigued, it's almost always because I haven't had enough to drink that day.
I agree. Self-awareness is an absolute superpower. And I had a guy that worked for me years ago who was in Alcoholics Anonymous, and he shared this acronym HALT. And the advice to recovering alcoholics was avoid the HALT situations. HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
Yeah.
And because those are the slippery slopes that make it really easy to fall off the wagon. So just don't be hungry. Don't make decisions when you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired. So
yeah, that's
and it starts with self-awareness.
Yeah, and I know for certain mine are hungry, thirsty, tired. And and I guess angry. I'd never actually heard that before, and they're almost exactly aligned with mine. When it's a bad time to make a decision. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Super
good advice.
interesting.
Extract yourself. Look, some of the best advice I've heard was just extract yourself and pretend you're watching yourself in a movie. I'm like,
Mm,
why is Todd being so pissy right
yeah.
now? Why is Todd being helpless in this situation?
Yeah.
Why is he taking himself out of the game? Like, oh, well, let's look at some of the other things that are happening to Todd right now, and then let's avoid those situations, and probably you'll avoid the consequences down the road.
Yeah.
So, good stuff. What are some misconceptions that you run into about mindset and the importance to the entrepreneur?
Yeah, great question. I kind of think the misconception is like we're always looking for what's the one thing. You
Mm,
always want to get what's the one thing that's going to make the biggest difference. And I think the misconception around mindset, it's like a muscle, it's just like going to the gym. That's why you have a morning routine. That's why I have a morning routine. That's why I have an evening routine. And we have to train our mindset muscle. We can't just, oh, the one thing is have your green juice in the morning and you're going to be great. To me, it's about training the discipline. It's about training yourself to live, life by design. I want to
mm.
live by design. I don't want to live because of the way things happen to me. And that's not easy. Like, you know, particularly when we're doing things we don't really want to do. For me, a lot of that, and I mean, this is going to sound ironic. I don't do any bookkeeping. I don't do any accounting. I'm a strategic thinker the way I go. So when I do have to dive into the numbers, which I often do, that's part of my role, is I have to train myself to get through those times and get through the things I don't want to do. I don't know if you know who David Goggins is. If you're a David Goggins fan, he talks about suffering and being okay with suffering, and just, you don't want to go for a run, you go for a run. You don't want to go for a swim, go for a swim. You don't want to sit down and, do your invoicing, sit down and do your invoicing. And it's not easy, and we have to train ourselves to that. It doesn't just happen with one thing. You just gotta do it every day. Work on mindset doesn't happen by chance. Mindset happens by design. So design the mind you want to have and train yourself into it and work on it every day.
Yeah, I think I do know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Former Navy
Navy SEAL.
SEAL.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like if it doesn't suck, I don't do it.
Yeah.
Something like
Yeah.
that.
And I mean, as part of my morning routine, not only do I read, I actually find an inspired story. And so I'll find like YouTube clips of him for 3 minutes or 5 minutes in the morning. Or other
Yeah,
people like it. An opportunity knocks. It's a YouTube subscription that I watch. It's usually 3 to 10 minutes. An opportunity knocks, and it just has these stories that people tell that are inspired. And his is one of them that I found on that channel that I love.
yeah. I actually have seen some of his stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I agree. I think flooding your mind with positive, inspiring things.
Yeah.
Think on things. I watched a video from Earl Nightingale, an old tape from Earl Nightingale
Okay.
about the brain. And the short version of it is what you think about is what you attract.
Totally. Yeah.
So maybe that's crazy. Maybe it's wrong, but you know what? I'd rather err on the side of discretion.
Yeah.
And if it is true that what I think about, I attract, then I want to think about positive things. I do not want to attract negative things. And gratitude, I believe, actually rewires your brain and activates the engages the reticular activation system, where you start looking for those things and you see less negativity and you see more positivity. And then if in fact what you think about you attract, then you get into this upward spiral.
Yeah.
So
I totally agree. And I mean, just really quickly on that, you mentioned the reticular activator. I like saying it because I think it makes me sound smart sometimes. But I kind of think, the way my brain works, whether you think about the law of attraction, like if I think a certain way, I attract it. I think of it more the way that logic works for me is that the more I think about it, the more I'm going to be looking out for opportunities to move in that direction. And that's what, that's another way that the reticular activator works. So, if I'm trying to create, one of the things I realized, I was too busy. So I was looking, the question, I was like, how do I create space for myself? And all of a sudden these opportunities, or I'd see how other people created space for myself, or if I hadn't set that as my intention, I might not have noticed it. I think that's a really important way. That's how kind of the law of attraction works. Yes, whether you think of it as I'm attracting it to myself or I'm just opening my own radar, that's what the reticular activator, it's that radar that picks out the things that are relevant to you.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're listening and you have no idea what the reticular activation system is, it's the thing that kicks in when you buy a white car, and then suddenly you see all of these white cars and you think, where have all these white cars been? Everybody's buying white cars. And the reality is the white cars have been there all the time, but now you are looking for those things. And I agree. I think maybe this law of attraction stuff is right. Maybe it's bogus. I don't know, but I would rather err on the side of discretion. I realize there are things in this universe I don't really understand.
Yeah.
But if it could work for me, then let's do it. I think that's why it's so important to write out your goals. This is what I want. This is how I want to operate. This is who I want to be. This is what I want to have. I want to focus on this area. And then when opportunities, like you said, if your goal is I need more space, I need more time, then when something comes along, an app or some opportunity comes along that lines up with that, you see it. Whereas otherwise it could just be lost in the noise in the background.
Yeah. And you know what, even if not everything happens, I'd rather be in the mindset of thinking about the things that I want than in the mindset of thinking about the things I don't have.
Yeah. I read a great book by Scott Adams, the author of the Dilbert cartoon.
Yeah.
He's a brilliant guy.
Yeah.
And he talks about this. I won't go into it. If you want a really interesting read, he has a book called How to Fail at Everything and Still Be a Wild Success or something like that.
Yeah.
Hold on. I'll grab it. How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great book. He talks about this and he says something to the effect of, hey, be positively delusional. If your mindset is a result of the story you're telling yourself, then, and if being positively delusional causes you to take action and be more confident and do the things that you normally wouldn't otherwise do, then call it delusional, but it could help you. So let's back out of that rabbit hole. Although I would love to go down that rabbit hole. I want to be cognizant of your time.
Good.
What has been your most expensive mistake as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think back to a time when a partner of mine and I were deciding about hiring a consultant, and at the time it was a pretty big investment for us, and we looked at each other and said, we've done dumber things. So that was how we decided whether to hire that consultant or not. I actually think the biggest mistake I've made was in one particular business staying in too long. There's a real fine balance between persevering and pushing through, which we all want to do, and we all want to have success, and realizing that sometimes whether the model is broken or the environment, the circumstances are broken or whatever. And so I pushed and pushed, and I'm just like any entrepreneur, I'm hard-headed, and I there's always the breakthrough, but there's also a time to recognize when it's time to move on. And so I had one of my businesses probably about 5 years longer than I should. And I just worked at it and worked at it and worked at it. And I got burned out and more tired and more frustrated. And, I ultimately I exited that business. I sold it to somebody else, and what they're doing with it is I don't actually even know at this point. But I think the biggest that it cost me the most in terms of mindset, in terms of energy, in terms of my own happiness, because it was all about pushing through. And so while I can't put a dollar figure on it, it was actually, and I didn't even intend it to be coming out of the mindset discussion. It was really about the mindset and how it really kicked my ass. That's probably the biggest, most costly mistake I did, is I didn't listen to kind of where I was and where I needed to be in life.
So what did it do? How did it cost your mindset?
So after that experience, I spent so much time stressed out and not sleeping. You know, I used to, when I would wake up in the middle of the night, if it was before 2 a.m., I said, oh, good, because I could go to the other room and maybe fall asleep on the couch. Whereas if I woke up and it was 3:30, I knew I wouldn't get back to sleep. And so, you know, I mentioned before, I'm an endurance athlete. So I was running ultra marathons at the time. So, you know, I'd be not sleeping and then going out for 6-hour runs on Saturday. And when I eventually did exit that business, I was so exhausted. It actually took me 3 years to recover, where I'd literally be out. It'd be 8:30 at night. I'm like, I got to go home. I'm just too tired. I was so exhausted, and, you know, adrenal burnout and kind of cortisol levels and all of that. Like, I physically couldn't do, like, I'd get up, I'd go, like, I'm going to go for a run, and I'd roll over and go back to sleep. So I didn't live how I choose to live for about 3 years, because I was so beat up from that experience. Yeah, that, to me, that's way more expensive than making a $50,000 business mistake. You know, that we can always recover from. Amazingly, there's always another deal around the corner. So but to me, actually building the business I'm building now has been largely because by design. How do I get rid of complexity in my life? How do I make things be more in flow than more in pain grinding state? I wasn't aligned with that business personally. I didn't love it, and that's where the toll came from.
Got it. That's great. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
I want to be cognizant of your time, and I appreciate you investing this time. I have plenty of other questions. Maybe we could do a round 2 at some point, but let's
Sure.
land this thing,
Of course,
and talk about actually what you do,
right?
and what your business is, what you do, and where people can go if they want to find out more about what you do.
Sure. So the business is Shift Financial Insights. And what we do is we make accounting not suck for business owners. And more specifically, what we do is we handle the entire accounting. So we are the bookkeeper. We have a service, we call it bookkeeping on steroids. And we have our financial insights service. So we do both the getting the numbers right, but then actually helping you understand them. We put them into all the charts and graphs that you can look at and intuitively understand the business. I do a fair amount of speaking on the topic, and I have an exercise where I can take someone who self-identifies as like a 3 out of 10 in understanding for the financial information. And I promise I can get them to a 9 or 10 in 15 minutes or less if you use information in this format. And so that's what we do. We deliver that information to people, and you know, I'm happy to do an offer actually for your listeners. I'm going to say the first 5, maybe 10, depending on how many requests we get. If you send an email to charts, CHARTS, charts at shiftfinancial.co, not .com, .co, I will take your financial data and put it into that reporting package, so you can get an understanding of what your financials, how easy it could be for you to understand your financials. I won't, no cost, happy to do it. You can take that and self-implement it all day long. Thrilled to do that for you. So the first 5 or 10 people, I'm happy to do that for. And then you can get a sense of what it could really feel like to be empowered over your numbers. That's one of our number one objectives, is help entrepreneurs be empowered over their numbers and understand what it's like to not have this financial cloud. So that's what we do. And my email is spencer@shiftfinancial.co. And by the way, the reason it's .co, not .com, is when I named it and I went out to get the URL, somebody had purchased it purely for the purposes of reselling it. And I hate that. So I wasn't going to pay. Somebody literally wanted to charge me 20 grand for the name. And I said, no, thank you. So I went with .co. So don't send it to .com.
Got it. Charts at shiftfinancial.co. And yeah, I appreciate that offer. So you've got an audience of a few thousand, maybe at some point, more construction business owners and entrepreneurs, and want to be entrepreneurs. There are lots of people who are thinking about priming themselves up to make the jump to start their own gig. If you had a couple of minutes to encourage them or just give them some advice, what would you tell them?
Yeah, one of the first thing is to make sure, just be passionate about that area. I talked about when I wasn't passionate about my own business. I'm extremely passionate. I think entrepreneurs can change the world.
Mm.
And my role is to help them through their financial blind spot. That's why I'm here. So anytime I'm working and especially I've designed this business that I have now. I love it. I love working with entrepreneurs. I love the service we provide. And so when I'm not as excited or not having a good day, it's a lot easier for me to get through and grind through because I'm super aligned with what I'm doing. If you've come up through the trades and you're considering moving into starting your own business, awesome. Make sure you're doing it because you love it. If you're doing it because you think you're gonna have more holidays, or you think you're gonna make more money, or you think you're gonna, it's gonna be fun or easy or whatever. Yeah, maybe all those things. It may be the opposite of those things. A lot of owners, it takes a long time before they make more money than when they were an employee. So make sure that you're super passionate about what you're doing. If you were a trade, are you really passionate about making people happy and seeing them light up at the finished product? Or are you just waiting for the check? If you're going into business to make more money, most people who go in with that struggle the most. There's gotta be a deeper reason why.
Absolutely. Could not imagine a better way to land this thing. Spencer, this has been fantastic. I'm sure we could talk for hours.
Yeah,
and
like
I appreciate your generosity and everything that you've offered here. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. I really enjoyed that.
All right. Hope you got something out of that. And not only do I hope that you got something out of it, I hope you actually go implement something from this podcast. So here's my challenge to you. Pick one thing that you can take action on. Maybe it's the tiniest little thing, but take some action on these insights. Collecting information doesn't do you any good. In fact, collecting information sometimes immunizes you against taking action. You feel like, oh, I know it, therefore it's going to magically show up in my life or my business. Wrong. You need to take action. You need to change your habits. You need to put these things in place so you'll actually get some benefit out of this wisdom that you heard today. So take Spencer up on his offer. Send him an email to that email address, charts@shiftfinancial.co. Be one of the first in there so you can take advantage of that free offer. And then if you want to systematize your business, go to constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. Get your hands on the free training called, oddly enough, Systematize Your Construction Business. Pretty simple, right? And if you want to be part of a dynamic group of like-minded construction business owners who are all working together to grow their businesses, and you don't want to be an island. If you felt lonely and you wish you had somebody to talk to, you need to come to the Advance. October 17th and 18th in beautiful Lexington, Kentucky. And you can grab your early bird pricing right now through August 15th over at constructionbusinessaccelerator.com/advance. And if you can only remember one thing, and you want to send a text and get this information, send a text to 859-667-2015. Tell me what you're looking for. I will text you the links to that information so you can get what you need. One last thing I want to read is a review. I would love it if you get some value out of this podcast, if you could leave a rating, leave a review. Here's one from Minnow Peachy. Minnow says this: a great podcast packed full of useful information. It's that good you feel guilty for getting that much information for free. So if that's you and you feel guilty, take a load off your conscience. Go leave a rating or review. Maybe it'll help you feel better about that guilt. But if you don't feel guilty, that's great. I don't want you to feel guilty, but I do want you to get some value out of this. I do want you to implement this stuff so it actually shows up. As always, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate the messages, the connecting with me on Facebook, the ratings, the reviews. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm out there. Look me up on those platforms. And as always, thanks for listening. I will see you next time.